MzeroA Online Ground School, Jason Schappert here. Inflight Coffee is back. This is Season 3, Episode 1, VFR to IFR Mastery. Welcome to Inflight Coffee. What is happening? MzeroA Online Ground School. Jason Schappert here. Welcome back to Inflight Coffee. So happy to be back with you all. This is technically Season 3. We had to start dividing this thing up into seasons now. Season 3, Episode 1. So thankful, so blessed to be back with you all. Dave G, great to see you. Brad, you almost got first comment in there. So good try as far as that goes. Joe, I saw you compliment Ray earlier. Great to see you on here. Ron, Frank, Danny, James, good to see you all. Hey, how this is going to work today is I'm going to make a little cup of coffee. For those of you that may be new to all this, make a little cup of coffee, and then we're going to talk about this great subject of VFR to IFR mastery. Really dive into it. Have some great and really neat updates from the FAA as well, so really looking forward to that. Let's say hi to some people in the chat. TCB, good to see you. SRT Boy 04, good morning to you as well. Username Woodland Creek Homestead in Arkansas, great to see you. Michael J. McMurray, as always, good to see you. Marco, Lance, Robin, good to see you. Ed Kessler back in town, good to see you. Hey, question for you, John Verselli. Question for you, Joe Peters, and everybody else out there. You know the drill. It may be Season 3, it may be a new season, but it's still time to check in. You know the rules. Where are you watching from, and how is the weather? Using only emojis. All right, that is the rule. I need you checking in where you're watching from, how is the weather, using only emojis. I'm gonna get started making a cup of coffee while you do that check-in. You know, I realize there may be some newbies who are wondering, why is Jason on my YouTube or on my Facebook right now, and why is he making a cup of coffee? Hold on, you gotta tamp this down. 26 pounds of pressure. It's just like pulling a Cirrus cap chute, right, Coach Ray? How much weight is that? What did they say the weight is? 26, I can't remember the number. It's a lot. You'd have to like do a pull up and hang from it, it feels like sometimes. All right, we've got that. Hold on, let's make sure you got water. Then I wanna check and see everyone's watching. It's raining in Philly. It's sunny. Can we show Austin? Every time I see Austin, I aspire to have a beard like Austin one day. I mean, on webinar on Tuesday, Coach Ray and a few others will tell you, I almost had that beard. It was getting really close, but I shaved it off for you guys. Rainy in New York, where Mr. G is at. All right, hold on. The most important part of in-flight coffee is clear prep. It's just important as far as that goes. All right, what's happening? Upland, California, it is sunny. Luke, first in-flight coffee. We got to talk about where in-flight coffee. Whose first in-flight coffee is this? Type in me in the chat, maybe. If you're wondering, why is Jason on my computer or on my phone right now making a cup of coffee? I thought he flew airplanes. I do fly airplanes, but I like coffee today too. So we're going to talk about that. Marcos, long time watcher. He gets the spoon emoji. All right, we got that. Now we're adding some water. Classic Americano here. It's all working, looking good. So a bunch of new people. All right, first time watching. Nolan, great to see you. Schiller, great to see you. Joseph, Natasha. All right, awesome. So many new people. I absolutely love it. In-flight coffee started literally during COVID. Sorry, I'm being told I got to watch my coffee. I'm a really good multitasker. You give me different clearances. Do you want to see Jason make a mess live on television? Perhaps. All right, let me focus. I'll get this done. What is the one and the only way, Bradley, to sweeten coffee? Really, it's the only thing you should ever put in your coffee. Vicky Mackey knows it. My buddy Italian Mark knows it. Eric Deagle knows it. It's honey. Y'all are putting sugar and stevia and all this stuff. And here, Pete sent me good old Amish. It even has the Amish people with a horse and buggy on it. Like that is this is authentic, right? This is the only way. If you want the real Jason Schappert experience, it's an Americano with honey. That's the only way you do it. And people make fun of me. I've been to coffee shops where I ask for honey and they go, we don't do that here. They're really missing out, is what it comes down to. All right, let's sit down. Let's enjoy our cup of coffee here. Let's talk airplanes. Before we do that, we have so many new people. It's so exciting here. In-flight coffee started in COVID, actually. Here we are sitting on lockdown, nothing else to do, and fired up an iPhone on an ironing board instead of the kitchen island and just made a cup of coffee on a Saturday and started talking. And 150 episodes later, that's where it was. We had to go to seasons because it gets a little bit too crazy consuming every single Saturday. But we will be the first Saturday of each month until I get tired. That's how it's going to go. No, the real reason behind In-Flight Coffee is always to bring value, right? The goal of every live stream is to save just one life. And I hope we do that and accomplish that here today, especially on the subject of VFR to IFR mastery. So thankful to see so many of you out here, so many new people. Thank you for checking in on the weather. Marco says, I remember the first episode of In-Flight Coffee. I love it. I love it. So good. So many. Joe says every Saturday was a lot. It was a lot. And Joe, you also know one day I want to buy a boat. I don't have permission to get a boat yet. So when I get that boat, that's where some Saturdays are going to go. Speaking of things, did you know we are giving away an iPad this month? We're giving away an iPad this month. Head over to MzeroAcontest.com for your opportunity to win that iPad. I believe the big giveaway live stream is the 30th. Don't totally hold me to that, but that is my goal. So we are giving away an iPad, MzeroAcontest.com to sign up and learn more about that. So really, really thankful. Oh, Jonathan Hubbard, thank you for your kind words out there as well with that. Eric, no dog. No dog. Just treats though. Just treats. But the treats started. Inside jokes. Brad says buy a Mooney or buy a boat. He picks the Mooney over a boat. You can only choose one. It happens. But Ron says, I can't believe you still don't have a boat. What's up with that? Priorities, is what it comes down to. All right, let's dive into it. Enough about me. Let's dive into it here. Today's topic: VFR to IFR mastery. Check in the chat. Type in VFR if you're a VFR only pilot. If you're an IFR pilot, type in IFR in the chat. I need to know who I'm talking to. Maybe you're IFR and a half. You're working on your instrument rating. Put it in the chat. VFR for my VFR pilots, IFR for my IFR pilots. I want to know who I'm talking to. Let's blow up the chat here quickly as well. Joe, Glenn. Hey, Glenn, good morning to you as well. New IFR, Lance. I love the humility of that. Awesome. Hey, Chris Phillips, good to see you. IFR student. Elizabeth, VFR, awesome. Alan says very rusty. IFR, no problems with that. Some VFR, we got a good little mix. I like Justin's humility, IFR, but 2 years of rust. You know what? I appreciate that you have that humility in there. Steve just passed IFR check ride 2 weeks ago. Absolutely amazing. Awesome. VFR for now, work on IFR. Mr. Don Gibson, we know that. Hey, Vicky Mackey, VFR, of course. In IFR check ride prep, says John. And Bill, IFR, are you doing it in the new airplane, Bill? IFR check ride next week. Some newly minted IFR. Awesome. All right. So this is super. So we got a good mix of people here. So our topic today is going to be that transition, VFR to IFR mastery. Plus, I want to give you really an exclusive update on from the FAA on the use of EFBs, electronic flight bags, your iPad essentially, for use on your check rides as well. So some good stuff as well. By the way, when I'm looking this way, I'm looking at the chat. I'm not trying to be rude, but my TV is over there for my new people. So I'm not being rude by not making eye contact. I'm looking that way at Kevin Cook, who got his ATP 2 weeks ago. And John, IFR, but 10 years of rust. We can work on that. Douglas, prepping for IFR now. I love this. All right, so let's talk. This is interactive. Again, when I look this way, it's because I'm chatting with you all. This question's for everybody. VFR or IFR, you answer it how you need to. In a few words, don't type paragraphs. I realize that's a lot of typing here. There's going to be a lot of comments here in a second. So just give me a few sentences, a few words preferably. Share with me some situations you've had where IFR was necessary. Share with me some situations you've had where IFR was necessary. And for my VFR pilots, share with me a situation where you showed up at the airport and the weather changed and you made a no-go. Or it could be 2 days out and you made a no-go decision. Or you were flying and you had to turn around and make a no-go decision. Share with me in the chat some situations. I just want to, and the reason I want to kind of crowdsource this is I want to show and I want to build the importance of an instrument rating. So we're going to build on that. I love what Brad said, anytime flying at night. Tom Morgan said the smoke from the wildfires. You know that wildfire smoke made it all the way down to Florida? It kind of, if you saw the trail, came out like over Bermuda and came down. Just crazy stuff here. Cross countries, says Tim Key. Dave G said to get back and forth to Oshkosh instead of stuck for days. Yeah, I totally believe it. Winter flying, says Jonathan Hubbard. It started snowing at the field. I've done a little, maybe in Florida, I've done a little bit of snow flying. Wow, Bill Campbell, good to see you. I hope to see you at one of the Rex Air events soon. Bill said alternator failure over the Everglades at night. Preferably, I'd never have an alternator failure, although I had one 2 weeks ago. I think I shared with many of you. At night over the Everglades does not sound intriguing either. Eric had to relocate, he calls it the van, the caravan, to a new city. Schuler says, I was flying to, how do you say that name? Tuli, help me with pronunciation. Tueli. He was flying in Utah. For VFR training, the cloud levels were very low, had to turn around because the wind and clouds were too high. We're going to talk about that exact scenario here in a bit. A lot of you dealing with the smoke I saw still. Isn't that crazy? Michael J. McMurray, thank you for your humility. Inadvertently flew through the clouds while on a night flight cross country. John shared flying at night, flew through a huge, completely invisible cloud in the soup big time. So let's time out real quick here. And then I want to come back to a story. First off, I want to share a thought here. I believe everybody should pursue an instrument rating. I believe everybody should pursue an instrument rating, but I want to come back to what John and Michael J. McMurray and a few other people actually said here. I don't believe there's such a thing as nighttime VFR. I realize legally there is nighttime VFR, right? It's just the ceilings are high, the visibility is good, everything else. But if you've done any amount of flying, you realize how easy it is to inadvertently find yourself VFR into IMC at night. It is just such a dangerous situation. There was, I don't know if Tyler's watching, but there was just, and I don't want to get into it today because I want to be respectful of everybody involved and let the NTSB do their job. But there was a recent accident in Kentucky with a, we'll just say a CFI that was, didn't have the best professionalism, would be the most respectful way to say it. There's many factors into this, but at the end of the day, it was a nighttime VFR cross-country flight into a thunderstorm that they knew was there, tried to beat it, and ended up flying right into it because you just can't see this sort of stuff. As well as Eric Deagle said, instrument rating will save your life. And I want to share with you a story. And I share with you these stories not so you make fun of, oh, look, the dumb thing Jason did. That's fine if you want to do that. As long as you learn from it. And I hope you too can share your stories and have the humility to share your stories as well, because this is how we learn, this is how we get better. I was 16 years old, working very, very close to my, getting close to my check ride, and I still needed to do more cross-country time. And leaving from the Ocala airport, we have the Cross City Airport very close, like a 53 nautical mile flight, perfect little cross-country, and I will never forget, I took off out of Ocala. I'm going 50 miles away. I'm in 6711 Juliet, 1960-something Cherokee 140. And I'm flying Ocala. The weather was good. And I'm flying along, and I don't know, I planned for 3,500 feet, and all of a sudden I start seeing those clouds coming, but it was just like a few layer. So I had this idea that, it's really, I can't really go lower. I'm at 3,500 feet. I'm not going to get flight following. This is going to be difficult here. I'm going to just get above this few layer. So I gave it full power. I climbed up. I don't remember the altitude I climbed up to, say 5,500, just to get above this few layer. Well, you know where this story is going, because you know how weather works sometimes. That few layer, as I continued on, became a scattered layer. And I remember flying along, looking, going, well, I can still see the ground, so it's probably going to be okay. And as I fly along, I'm now 15 miles from Cross City. That's now a broken layer, and I can barely see I can barely see anything down. But in my mind, my 17th birthday was coming up. My check ride was getting close. I needed to get this cross country done. I was still in high school at the time, so flying afternoons were very, very limited, or weekends, right? So availability was really challenging to get flights in. And as I continued on, I'm thinking to myself, I've got to get this check ride done. I want to do my check ride on my birthday. I want to do all these things. This pressure that I gave myself, I continued to fly. That layer became an overcast layer. And thank goodness I don't know the model, but it was one of those, does anybody remember those ancient Apollo GPS units? The screen it wasn't even chromatic. I guess you'd call it chromatic. It was a black screen with orange dots. Orange or reddish was really the only color it did. That is the only, and you put in longitude and latitude into it. That's the only way I know I made it to the cross city area, because the GPS showed I was exactly where I plotted my point, because I could no longer see my VFR checkpoints. And I remember circling above Cross City going, well, Cross City's down there somewhere. So I decided to fly on back and went back. Thankfully, by the time I made it to Ocala, while that few and scattered layer was there, I was still able to get down safely. But you better believe there I was as, I don't know, a 25, 30-hour pilot, feeling I had to be somewhere, feeling I had to get this cross country done because the plane was down for maintenance, because scheduling was so difficult, because of all these different things. I continued on. Thankfully, I was able to come back and land safely at the Ocala airport. I remember landing, and my instructor said to me, "How was Cross City?" I said, I didn't make it to Cross City. She said, "Yeah, I was checking the METAR. I'm glad you didn't make it to Cross City and you turned back around." She goes, "But I have bad news. That doesn't count as your cross country. Just because you overflew Cross City, you have to actually touch down there." So the next day, when the weather was better, I went and did that cross country. But I remember the feeling in my gut of being stuck on top and thinking, how do I get this thing down safely? Like, I had barely had any foggle time, any hood time. It was a very, very limited airplane. John Howard said that would have been the end of your greatness. There was no greatness at that point, sir. There's not even greatness now, that's for sure. There's a reason we say a good pilot is always there. I'm just a good pilot, certainly not a great one, aspiring great one, but thank you for that. But I remember just being stuck on top. And it really instilled in me the importance of what I'm sharing with you here today is, again, I believe everybody should earn an instrument rating. So if you're willing to make that commitment to me, maybe you'll sign off in the chat by typing in me in the chat, perhaps, "Yes, Jason, I will commit after my private pilot to pursuing an instrument rating." And you know what? I'm very particular of the words I use, of just saying, I'll pursue it. You may not earn it. I realize not everybody wants to earn an instrument rating. I totally understand that. But will you do yourself a service and at least pursue it? Pursue getting, legally getting your head in the clouds, because there's such a difference between actual instrument and simulated instrument. Actually pursue, right? Get the knowledge, and most importantly, know how to apply it in the event of an emergency, in the event of a night flight, and you inadvertently find yourself in a cloud, whatever it is. Or, like Chris Ritchie just put in the chat, get current then. You already have it. Will you make a commitment to me, MzeroA Nation, to get current again? And you know what? I don't even like the word current. Let's not just get current, right? What are we really pursuing? We're pursuing proficiency. We're really pursuing mastery. You see, current is, have I done my 6 approaches in 6 months, my takeoffs and landings in the preceding 90 days? Have I done all these things, right? That's what that says. But in all actuality, that's just the bare minimums. Proficiency is, would I take my kids flying? Would I take my wife flying? Would you take your spouse flying? Whatever that may be, that's what proficiency really is. And mastery, well, mastery is a never-ending quest. It's not some score on a test that you get, right? So you have to continue to pursue it. By the way, in the chat, username Analog Speedbird said, wearing my 2-3 Mike Zulu shirt for the chat today. And he will pursue. You certainly got the right shirt. It's going to definitely improve your landings. That's for sure. But awesome, awesome. Pursue proficiency. Aspire for mastery. It's like earning a black belt. You never meet anybody that earns their black belt and goes, okay, I'm done. I'm never coming to this dojo or whatever you call it again. right? No, they usually end up teaching or pursuing the second degree or whatever that may be, continuing to dive in and learn more and more. So let me speak to my VFR pilots, and then I'm going to speak to my IFR pilots here quickly. I want to first ask a question. For those of you that shared, Michael J. McMurray, John, there are a few others that maybe you didn't share this has happened to. If anyone, and you don't have to, I'm not putting you on the spot, just I called you out by name. If anyone would be so humble to share, if you have ever, nighttime, daytime, doesn't matter, inadvertently on a VFR flight plan, flown into a cloud, what did you do? And you don't have to share. You can just think about it in your mind. I realize this is kind of a tough thing to share publicly. What did you do? Because what I really want to teach here is what I have no other way to describe it other than this is truly the most important VFR maneuver to practice. The most important VFR maneuver to practice. And what I teach, and I'm going to use my parents gave me this airplane when I was a little guy. This is my original airplane, and I still play with it. I think my dad does pest control. I think one of my dad's customers made it and gave it to me. So I've always been into aviation. I was a little guy. I don't know how old I was, but I was a little guy. Still am a little guy at heart. All right. So the most important maneuver, I'm flying along. I'm in level flight. Fahila's got it. I inadvertently fly into a cloud. What happens? The shortest way out is right back where you came from. It is a standard rate 180-degree turn. It sounds so basic. But if you cannot do a standard rate 180-degree turn, you're leaving some tricks out of your flight bag. The most important thing you can do. And you can practice it. I have a video on this. It's on our YouTube channel and Facebook from a long time ago. It's probably called something like that, the most important VFR maneuver, something along those lines. It is a 180-degree turn out of there. And I actually asked ATC to aim me towards the cloud, and then I'm going to do a 180 and told them all this. They gave me a block altitude. But flying on in, standard rate. So knowing what standard rate looks like on your turn coordinator, knowing what standard rate looks like on your attitude indicator, and making that 180-degree turn back out. I know that doesn't sound like a sexy maneuver to do, but did you know that 72% of VFR into IMC is fatal if it leads to an accident? 72% of accidents that have a VFR into IMC component have a fatality involved. I think it was the University of Illinois, and I've done an entire animation series on this, so I'm not going to play it here, but I'll just briefly explain it to you. Did a study. The name of the study ended up being called 178 seconds. What they did is they took 20 private pilots, only private pilots, no instrument ratings. They put them in simulators. They took them up to all the same altitude. They put them all in the exact same scenario, VFR only pilot, inadvertently flying into an overcast layer. All 20 pilots had the same thing in common. They all found the ground in explosive fashion. There's no other way to call it. They crashed in the simulator. The only difference was the time. As short as 30 seconds, as long as like 3 or 4 minutes someone made it for. On average of the 20 pilots, they lasted 178 seconds. A minute and a half, basically, right? Sorry, 2 minutes and a half. Yeah, you panic, you freak out. This is why, if you're ever looking for something to do, hey Jason, I'm tired of being on the traffic pattern, I'm tired of the steep turns, I'm tired of stalls, what should I do? Go out to your practice area in a perfectly trimmed up airplane and keep practicing standard rate 180-degree turns. To the left is probably easiest, but I also realize you could inadvertently fly into a cloud and there's more cumulus activity this way. Sometimes a right turn out might be better. You would know the scenario better. You're in it to the left and to the right. Left is certainly an easier turn to make. Why is left an easier turn to make, right? You're working with the aerodynamics of the airplane. You're working with the propeller. You're working with your P factor, your torque effect, your slipstream effect. You have these left turning tendencies, asymmetrical propeller loading, as we call it. You're working with your asymmetrical propeller loading, aka P factor. It is easier to make turns to the left. This is why steep turns are easier to the left. This is why you sit in the left seat. This is why your traffic pattern is to the left. Did you ever wonder all that stuff? It's all because of the aerodynamics of your airplane, called asymmetrical propeller loading. 4 types, that's one of 4 types of left turning tendencies. Webinar for another day. But again, the most important VFR maneuver to practice. So now, I want to speak to my IFR pilots, my rusty IFR pilots, and my aspirational IFR pilots. And really, this applies even if you are, honestly, even if you're VFR only, this applies to you. Let me grab a sip of coffee. This is a coffee show, after all. This applies. And the trick is this. Can you stay ahead of the airplane? Put it in the chat. This is interactive here. This is interactive here. Put it in the chat. What are some ways you stay ahead of the airplane? Give me some ideas in the chat. I've got my ideas, but I want you to put it in the chat. What are some ways you are working to stay ahead of the airplane? And Bradley, wearing an MzeroA t-shirt, like I saw in the chat earlier, is certainly a great way to do it. He said, note, MzeroA shirt improves landings. I mean, this one's got a lot of landings on it. So, you know, it's like, if you want to gain more than one, Brad, I can still send it to you. Joe said, on the ground, set in the radios. Love it. I'm not going to try to read the username, but you're exactly right. On YouTube, always ask yourself what's next. I'm always playing the game. What frequency is next? Who is next? What checklist is next? Fahila says, proper planning on the ground. Love it. John Dela Cruz is going where we're going. Briefing while in cruise flight. We're going to talk about some approach briefs here in a bit. Autopilot, I love it. Alex said clear thinking, calling out what comes next. I love this idea of saying it out loud. I think you're spot on. Douglas, I love your comment there. Destination airport details, mentally flying the pattern. Sounds like you've been watching MzeroA for a little bit, my friend. I love that. Andrew, frequencies preloaded. Dave says constantly ask yourself if there's anything you can be doing to reduce future workload. A lot of having the frequencies ready, autopilot ready. You know, I've been to that point of autopilot ready. I've been doing a lot of cirrus flying lately, as you saw in this Tuesday video. Andrew said downshift, yeah. I think that was a downshift. You know, I've been pre-programming the autopilot on the ground. I will turn the indicated airspeed button on because I do an indicated airspeed climb of 120 knots, and I'll program 120 knots. I have the heading mode on and ready to go, and I have it bugged for runway heading, knowing they're almost always going to give me a heading. You know, 23 Mike Zulu, climb maintain 2000, fly runway heading, runway 36 clear for takeoff. You're almost always going to get a heading IFR off the runway, but I don't hit the autopilot button. I've got the whole thing programmed. So as soon as I get up 600 feet, flaps up, caps available, autopilot on. And it's already programmed. There's no, ooh, I got to get that 120 knot indicated airspeed climb. Ooh, I got to get over to heading mode, get my bug where it needs to go. There's none of that. It's one button. So how can you be thinking ahead as well? Jamil said, configuring the flight plan before taxi. Absolutely. And you know what? That's another one. I promise I'll get into this. Has anybody ever flown or currently flies out of an airport where the FBO, where the line guy or the line gal stand in front of your airplane and wait for you to taxi out? Am I the only one that finds that, like, it's a little awkward? It's a lot. Matt and I were leaving, I don't know, we were on the way to Oshkosh. It would have been Nashville or something like that. And it was a really complex taxi. It was a really complex flight plan to load. I'm thinking, we're going to be here 15 minutes. And it was really hot. And the poor line guy was just standing there. And I'm like, it's almost like this awkward tension of like, I kind of just want to go because I feel bad. This poor guy's just standing there. But I got to call clearance. I got to program. I got to call ground. I got to debrief my taxi. Dude, you're going to be standing there 50. So now, like, when I walk out to the plane and they walk out, tell me the chocks, I say, hey, just so you know, I'm going to need like 15, 20 minutes after I start. So just like, don't get all excited over there. You're gonna be, has anybody had that happen? Like, that's a really, maybe I'm weird, but some FBOs, they do that. And I find it always strange when that happens. It's like, I feel like they're rushing me, but they're not. They're just happy to be out there. Anyway, so stay ahead of the airplane. I love some of the ideas you all put out there. It's spot on. You know, for me, And one that I didn't see mentioned as well, radios you mentioned you did so well at. But think about the knowledge element of this. And I know we've got an online ground school, right? I'm not trying to sell you anything or anything like that here. If you want to use our ground school, that's amazing. But if not, I'm happy you're here. It doesn't hurt our feelings either way. We're going to deliver value no matter what. That's the goal. But the knowledge portion of this, as anyone who is currently pursuing their instrument or has in the past will tell you, it is all about knowledge. And not just knowledge of approach plates and low and root charts. It's that who should I be talking to? What should I be saying? What did they just say to me? What does that mean? What should I be doing? Staying ahead of the airplane. Knowledge isn't power. Knowledge is potential power, right? So if knowledge isn't power, knowledge is just potential power, how do I then go and apply that? We all know someone who's like super, super smart but can't apply it as well. So you have to have these knowledge items down pat. You have to know your radios forwards and backwards. You have to, as John Dela Cruz said, you have to brief that approach so early. And I talked about this briefly in the Tuesday video, and I dove into it a lot during our member-only webinar. Every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, I do an exclusive member-only webinar for online ground schools. You can check it out at MzeroAtrial.com if you want to check that out, and learn more, or hop on this Tuesday's webinar. But I was teaching exactly that, how to brief an instrument approach. And I teach an acronym. I know there's a lot of acronyms, but I teach the acronym R-Martha. R-Martha. Easy way to remember, don't forget your Martha. R-Martha. What on earth does R-Martha stand for? It stands for the following. The R is this. Do I have the right approach? Let's be honest. Maybe you're VFR only even. Maybe you've pulled out the wrong taxiway diagram. Who's ever pulled out the wrong instrument approach before? This is so easy to do. I was just talking to Ed Kessler about this on the webinar. He said, Jason, I fly out of Fort Lauderdale. I've got Fort Lauderdale International, I got Fort Lauderdale Exec. A little north of him, you got Orlando International, you got Orlando Executive. You get these airports that are next to each other with similar names, different identifiers, but it would be so easy to pull out the wrong approach. It's easy enough to confuse airports as it is. Remember the, was it a C-130 or a P-3, I can't remember what it was, that inadvertently landed at the Albert Whitted Airport in St. Pete, thinking he was going to MacDill. I'm sure he was on an approach of some sort, maybe a visual, landed at the entirely wrong airport. That was an expensive fix. But again, do I have the right approach? Yes, this is the runway 36, RNAV or ILS into Ocala. Yes, this is the ILS 36 to Ocala. Yes, this is the RNAV 36 into Ocala. Do I have the right approach? Do I have the VOR Alpha for X-ray 35? Terrible approach to shoot. Who's ever shot a VOR Alpha approach? Oh, terrible approach to shoot, but you got to do them sometimes. All right, do I have the right approach? The next is the MA for my missed approach. What is my missed approach? Now keep this in mind. I like to brief like crazy amounts out. In the Cirrus, I'll start briefing like 50 miles out. In that video, I believe I even said like, hey, I was flying in Orlando International. I think I said, hey, I'm like 50 miles out. I'm gonna start briefing this thing. Again, you're going a little faster in a Cirrus, but even the 172, I'll start 25, 30 miles, maybe even sooner out. And I brief the missed approach. Usually the published missed approach, but I also know that sometimes, especially in the VFR, IFR practice environment, you will oftentimes get different, right? Different than what's published. 2 Mike Zulu, upon going missed, fly runway heading 2,000 feet back to me, right? That's a classic missed approach that they get. That supersedes the published missed approach. Does that make sense for everybody? That was what you're told to expect. Even in the event of a lost comm scenario, that was still something you were told to expect, that missed approach, right? So that's the kind of stuff you need to know and understand. The R in our R-Martha approach brief is our radios. Do I have the ATIS, the correct information? Do I have tower queued up next? Is tower the next frequency? Do I have ground, whatever it may be, do I have the appropriate radio frequencies tuned up? And don't forget the ATIS. Don't forget your navigational radios in there too. Am I tuned up to the right localizer? Have I identified it? Am I tuned up to the right VOR? Have I identified it? The T is for our times. Now, not every approach has times, but even on an ILS precision approach, I still start my time in the rare event, the glide slope goes away, I lose the glide slope, I'm now shooting a non-precision approach. I am ready for all of that as well. The H is for my heading. Not just the heading that I'm on, but what is the heading for the localizer? I also think about it in the syntax of, and I talk about this with our online ground school members this week on our Tuesday webinar, am I getting what I call like a slam dunk approach? Meaning if this is my localizer, are they giving me like one of these kind of approaches where I'm coming in at 90 degrees or greater? Anybody ever gotten a slam dunk approach where you're going, this is a really aggressive intercept angle. So I'm already thinking in my head, they better be turning me to the right here eventually. If not, the moment they even think about saying my name, I need to start making that big right turn around. So those are the kinds of things you need to be thinking about. Not just the heading of the localizer, what heading am I on currently for this intercept compared to the localizer that I'm flying towards. Does that make sense for everybody? That way you avoid getting that slam dunk approach like we spoke about there. A is for my altitudes. My altitudes, not just my altitudes for going missed, not just my altitudes for my decision height or my minimum descent altitude or my decision altitude, depending on what you're shooting or how you're looking at it, MSL or AGL. What are my altitudes for my step down fixes? Is there a VDP I need to be aware of associated with a step down fix? So it's not just that's my altitude I'm taking this approach down to. No, at the final approach fix, I should be at this altitude. Oh, there's a step down because there's a VDP, I should be here by then, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not just one. So if we could show them the complete R, Martha acronym, do I have the right approach? Right runway too, I saw you added it in there, Eric Deagle, that's good. Missed approach, brief the published missed, be ready for possibly something different. Radios, don't neglect the ATIS, don't neglect your navigational radios as well. Times, still start your time, I don't care it's a precision approach. Backups on backups if this thing ever goes non-precision. My headings, not just my localizer heading, but also my heading of how aggressive is my intercept as well. And lastly, my altitudes, not just my decision height or my MDA, my minimum descent altitude, but also any step down fixes, any VDPs, anything else like that I need to be aware of. R, Martha is the acronym to remember with that. So again, are we briefing this approach? And you know what? I know we talk about briefing this thing 50 miles out. I start briefing this stuff sitting on the comfy couch at home, reviewing this. Just the other day, you saw the video on Tuesday, I flew into Orlando International. Please don't think I just woke up one day, hopped in an airplane and said, I'm gonna go fly into a Class Bravo airport. There was a lot of prep, a lot of work that went into that flight before heading into MCO. Why did I fly into MCO? I had a meeting up there and that was honestly the closest airport. The Orlando Executive was a little too far away. It was the easiest. And I've been to Orlando International quite a bit. They're pretty favorable to general aviation coming in. But let's look at an approach plate and let's brief through that, okay? Let's look again. Here we are, Orlando International. Do I have the right approach at the right airport? Yes, this is the ILS or localizer into runway 18 right. Now we're talking parallel runways, gotta make sure right. Into Orlando International. Do I have the right approach, the right runway, in the right city? Okay, what is my missed approach? Okay, we can read our missed approach here. We can also see a pictorial of it here. Climb to 500 feet, climb right turn to 4,000, heading 270 to the ORL, 227 to the KMB intersection and hold, right? Did you know you have a pictorial version of your missed approach? Just like you have the textual version of your missed approach here as well. So you can work through all of that. Do I have my radios working my way across from my ATIS? You know, at an airport like this, I've got an approach ATIS, I've got a departure ATIS, including, a departure and an arrival ATIS. Talking to approach. Is this the approach I'm talking to? If not, this should be my next frequency because I'm probably be talking to them. Look, 2 tower frequencies, depending which runway I'm using. Oh, I'm using 18 right, so okay, that's this frequency down here, 124.3. Do I get ground queued up just yet? If I have enough frequencies and space, sure. Do I have the localizer tuned up and identified? Is there any VOR that's necessary? Oh, you know what? There actually is, because in my missed approach, it mentions ORL. So I should be thinking ahead. No one ever plans to go missed, and that's a mistake we make. If you go missed, you need to be able to identify this KMB intersection, which is off of ORL's 227 radial, right? Do you follow me? So you don't need to be scrambling as you're going missed. You're going missed for some legit reason, clearly. So again, you need to have ORL tuned up and identified and ready to go as far as that goes. So that makes sense for everybody there. Then coming into my altitudes, look at all these step down fixes, 5,000 to 4,000 at Naval, great intersection name, to Owner, I don't even know how to say half these, right? Hammy, you see all these Tuffy, all these step down fixes. Here's a VDP we were talking about as well. So these are the different things you need to be able to identify. People just want to fixate, oh, I'm taking this down to 294 feet. Well, you will take that down to 294 feet after you hit all these little step down fixes along the way. You've got to be prepared for all of these and know all your altitudes. Know your altitudes out of there on a missed approach there as well. Know my headings, not just my approach course heading of 185, but where am I out of here? It looks like straight ahead to 500 feet, then a climbing right turn to 270 on my missed. So that's important there as well. We have to know, we have to work through all of this as well. Now, here's the big question, and I know my goal is to have you out of here at the top of the hour, so here's where we're going to start to wrap up. I have a question for you all. Can this brief, can these approach plates, can these charts, can all this just be on my iPad? Like, can I be sitting on my big comfy couch? Can I do all this on my iPad? Can I legally bring all this on my iPad? Is my iPad a legal source of charts, diagrams, taxiway diagrams, plates, situational awareness? I won't use the word navigation, situational awareness, and everything else as well. I'll grab a sip of coffee while you all type. Just simple yes or no. If you want to explain why in the chat, you certainly can. But just want to know here. By the way, while you type in Miles, thanks for the kind words that Jason, I got an ad for your simplified ground school and decided to join you live and watching for a few minutes. That's awesome, my friend. I appreciate that. And let me save his question about Sporties versus MzeroA to the very, very end, if you'll make a note for me as well. I want to honor everybody's time before I go into that. So yeah, yes, we can. So some of you said yes, but we need to have a paper backup. Let me ask you this. Is a paper backup legally required? I'm not asking, is it a good idea? I'm asking, are you legally required to have a paper backup? We know it's a good idea, but do you legally have to have one? All right, a lot of good answers here. A lot of good answers here. Now, the answer is yes. All of this can be on your iPad, as long as it's current. The answer is no, you don't actually need a legal backup, as crazy as that sounds. Is it a really, really smart idea? And you as an MzeroA alumni, graduate, future member, whatever it is, you always go above and beyond, you're gonna have that backup. Anyways, I have a paper backup. I've got it on my phone as well as on my tablet as well. Backups on backups in the airplane, charts are downloaded. I've got 3 or 4 sources for all of this as well. So I like backups. Well, here's another question we've gotten a lot of confusion on. And you gotta remember, with our online ground school members, we get thousands of members through written tests, through check rides, literally every single month. So we get a lot of really great feedback. And we've been getting some feedback lately that examiners or evaluators, check ride examiners, check ride evaluators as they're now called, have been failing or taking away iPads on check rides. And many of you have been writing in and say, hey, Jason, yeah, I passed my check ride, thanks. However, this happened. My examiner took my iPad away, said I wasn't allowed to use it. Or this. So I said, wow. So some people said I'm gonna carry a second iPad, like Andrew said. And some get away with that. Not everybody gets away with that. So we, one of the amazing MzeroA team members said, you know what? I don't think that's right. You know, as MzeroA, we're not just a great ground school, we're a great advocacy group for you all as well. So we sent the FAA a friendly letter telling them that, hey, listen, this has been happening. We have a few questions. We would like your answers. By the way, John Dela Cruz said this happened to him on his instrument check ride. Well, you ready? And this letter is public record, by the way. And I guess I'll find a way to somehow make reference to it if you ever needed it for your check ride, but this is recorded too, so you can always go back. Here is copy paste our response from the FAA. Here's the question we asked. Are applicants allowed to use a mobile device as an EFB during their practical test? The current guidance allows for the use of mobile devices as EFBs under Part 91, but we've had instances where evaluators have prohibited students from using their devices during the test. Answer from the FAA. Yes, Appendix 7 of the Airman Certification Standards for the pilot practical tests states the evaluator is expected, listen to this, to test the applicant's knowledge of the systems that are available and installed and operative during both the ground and flight portions of the practical test. Time out. Let's come back here real quick. If you bring it with you, and if it's in the airplane, it is fair game for the test. You better know your iPad forwards and backwards, because if you bring it with you, it's fair game to be tested on how to use it and how to do the different features on it. I'm going to say it another way too. If you have an autopilot in your airplane and you have no clue or have never used it, it is fair game for the test. You better know how to use it. A step even further and further back into time. If you have an ADF in your airplane and your instructor says, oh, that's old, we don't use those anymore. If it's in your plane and it's working, it's fair game on the test. It's straight from the FAA's mouth. It's straight from the ACS. Okay? If you bring it with you, you better know how to use it. Let's keep reading here. Available, installed, and operative during both the ground and flight portions of the practical test. If the applicant has trained using a portable EFB to display charts and data and wishes to use the EFB during their practical test, the applicant is expected to demonstrate appropriate knowledge, risk management, and skill. Second to last paragraph. The ACS reference to the use of EFBs by default permits their use during the practical test. However, applicants who intend to use their EFB equipment must also comply with 14 CFR 9121. That's use of electronic devices. And EFBs fit in that category, you're fine. And we recommend review of the FAA's Advisory Circular 9121-1D. We spoke about that a few webinars ago in online ground school members, use of portable electronic devices. And AC 12076D, authorization for the use of it. Also in info, which is information for operators, 17003 also speaks to the allowed use of EFBs during the practical test, so specifically those that may not have installed navigation equipment. The story continues. We ask a lot of questions. MzeroA's question of the FAA. If applicants use a mobile device during their practical test, are they required to have a backup device or an alternative means of accessing necessary flight data? Straight from the FAA, answer, no. It's only suggested. Per Advisory Circular 9178, use of Class 1 or Class 2 EFBs must be able to address what action they may, if the mobile device fails, the applicant must be able to address what action they might take to safely continue the flight if failure of that mobile device is critical to the safety of flight. Question number 3 from MzeroA. We understand evaluators might ask students about their potential device failures, but is there a standardized requirement for a physical backup? If so, what constitutes a reasonable backup? No. However, if there is an alternative source of data is available to the applicant, that source of data used for navigation or performance planning would need to be current, up to date, and valid. Typically, that alternate source would be another mobile electronic or paper equivalent. So, you're not required to have a backup. But if you do have a backup, they would like it to be current as well. iPad and iPhone is a great example of what they just said. iPad paper backup. However, charts update every 56 days now. That gets a little bit expensive. So that's just one thing to think about. We love questions. Questions are the answers. We asked one more question of the FAA, and here's their answer. The question is, do evaluators have the authority to disable certain features on the EFB, such as geo-referencing on the charts? I was surprised by their answer. Yes. An examiner or evaluator has the responsibility to create operational scenarios that can include failures of certain equipment to determine if an applicant can manage an abnormal or emergency situation. For example, if electronic navigation availability is lost, the applicant should be able to continue to navigate effectively by alternate methods such as pilotage, dead reckoning, or radar vectors provided by air traffic control. In summary, an evaluator conducting a practical test cannot prohibit the use of an EFB. However, an applicant chooses to use an EFB during the practical test, the applicant must ensure compliance with 9121. Additionally, if the applicant wishes to use the EFB during the practical test, listen to this, The applicant is expected to demonstrate the appropriate knowledge, risk management, and skill when utilizing an EFB or mobile device that can include risk mitigation if some feature or that equipment fails or becomes unavailable. Who's ever had their iPad, iPhone, maybe even, unfortunately, you have an Android device. I'm not going to judge you. I still love you. Who's ever had it overheat before? I just had it happen the other day. And I was literally flying, holding my iPad up to the air vent, trying to cool the thing off. I had backups, and it was fine. The new iPhone 15s, I heard they've since fixed it, but they had that overheating issue. Just in normal course of action, right? These things happen. Overheat is going to happen. It may be cool where you are, but let me tell you, in Florida, it is still hot. And your iPad could overheat. Your iPhone, these EFB apps we use are data hogs. I mean that in the most positive way possible. It's a lot of data. It will overheat. You got to quit all the other apps, basically. Keep that thing cool. Keep the CPU, everything cool in there. There's no fan in most of these tablets. It's all solid state stuff. So you have to keep that cool, especially if it's against your leg or whatever that may be as well. Especially if the iPad is your only means of navigation. You know, I have an iPad that I use only for flying. I don't get email on it. You can't text me on it. You can't I think it's on its own iCloud, actually, just so I didn't get bombarded with FaceTime or calls or anything. Like literally, it serves one purpose. There's no photos on it other than screenshots of cool things I saw in ForeFlight. Those are the only photos. That's all that iPad is for. And I realized that, you know, that's a little expensive to have, because I still have a work iPad too. But I have just a dedicated flying iPad. That's all it does. The only app other than the Apple apps on there is ForeFlight, and I have Garmin Pilot on there as well. And that's it. So again, these are the things to think about, to ponder. You can bring your EFB. You better know how to use it. It better help you stay ahead of that airplane, and they can fail certain features like georeferencing. They could say, I'm sorry, Jason, your iPad just overheated. Hand it to me for a second and take it away from you for 10 minutes so it cools off. And you tell them, hey, hold it up by the air vent for me real quick and cool it off for me and hand it back to me when it cools off, right? If you're making a realistic scenario, you play it realistic as well. So with that, I want to ask first, by typing in me in the chat or give me a hand raise emoji, did anybody learn anything at all here today of season 3, episode 1 of In-Flight Coffee? Let me know in the chat, and while you type in, hopefully you learned something here today. Maybe you just learned to put honey in your coffee. It just makes it that much better. I want to open it up for questions, and Miles, I still have your question up there. Any questions you all have, any questions, any comments, anything aviation related, I am more than happy to talk about it, from just getting started to CFI issues, to buying an airplane, to you're working on your ATP. I don't care. I will talk about anything aviation related. I guess we got to put a time limit on this. You know, I'm a growing boy. It is lunchtime. I'm getting hungry here, and I still have more filming to do with that. So while you all type in some questions, and thank you for all the kind words as well on that, and maybe we can find some other questions while I answer Miles's question. Miles says he's having an issue remembering the information, and there's a lot of information. He also asked the question, and I'm going to put this back on our online ground school members that are out there. There's many of you out there listening to this right now. Miles asked the question, how is MzeroA different than Sporties? And I'll put it back on past members, current members, to share that a little bit, because first and foremost, I will never, ever, ever speak poorly of a competitor. I think Sporties is a great organization. I think it's run by really, really kind people. Never had an issue. They're just good. They're good people. Here's the thing. Everybody learns differently. I can be verbose in my teaching style. If you enjoy this live interaction, I do that every Tuesday with our online ground school members. So this isn't just like, here's a course and good luck, Miles. It's you're stuck seeing Jason every Tuesday. Now you're learning on your own, watching all the videos as well, but you're hopping on these webinars, you're diving in, you're learning as much as possible. We have such an amazing team that's even working today here to continue to support you with your questions, with your feedback. You would be amazed at the questions the team answers. We had many years ago, someone sent an email in, hey, my check ride's tomorrow and my instructor is busy and I don't know how to fill out my IACRA. I thought, it's definitely something your instructor should help you with. but we'll help you with it. Like, I mean, talking crazy stuff we've helped people with as well. Miles, it's the real world applicability. It's that example of you're not just going to pass a written test. You will, easily. You'll pass your check ride, easily. I'm in the business of making you a safe real world pilot. And that's what it all comes down to as far as that goes. So I hope that, and I'm sure some other great members like John, like Mo, like Marilyn, Dr. Bill, put some kind words in there. So thank you, Craig and everybody else, Dave, for putting those in there. Speaking of Dr. Bill, tomorrow is his birthday. And 41 years ago, his wife gave him an intro flight for his birthday. Now she kind of regrets it. Well, you know, to each their own. You know, congratulations. Do you congratulate someone for their birthday? That seems like a weird thing to say. Happy birthday. That came out wrong. Happy birthday, Dr. Bill. That is awesome. All right. Let's find, oh, Chris Ritchie, good point. So what about a ground power unit when the airplane's engine runs, it gets expensive? Well, that could work, Chris, but you need to ask your flight school, does the Hobbs meter run on electricity or does it run on oil pressure? Because there's sometimes you could hook up to a ground power unit through the plug in your 172, but the Hobbs meter keeps ticking. And flight schools like to bill on Hobbs. So you need to find out, does the Hobbs start when the master switch is on, or does it start when the oil pressure gets up in the green? Right? And there's two, it just depends how that airplane's wired. So you need to know that answer as well. Bill said, how do we suggest an idea for a future video? You put it right there in the chat, my friend, and it will get filed away. No, really, the team we're taking good notes over here as well. So, all right. Listen, this is your opportunity. Questions, comments, this is your time here, team. I love the comments. Everyone was saying how they had the iPad overheat too, as well. John Dela Cruz, how do you know when your student is ready for solo? Like, no. Like, for real, no. Is that what you're asking, Mr. Dela Cruz? I remember soloing my first student. I was more nervous than they were. How do you know? My friend, I've had both ends of the spectrum. I've had those that think they're ready before they are, and I've had those that didn't have the confidence to think they were ready to go, but they didn't believe they were ready to go. I've shared the story before, John, where I had a gentleman, he's probably watching. I'll just share his first name. His name is Harvey, and Harvey still watches these on occasion. And Harvey came to me from another instructor that was always helping him, always on the pedals, always on the yoke, always doing something. And Harvey and I were flying, and we would do laps in the pattern, and he would have a great landing. I said, great landing, Harvey. He goes, you were touching something. I said, no, Harvey, I wasn't touching anything. I said, Harvey, my hand's right here. And he had another, Harvey, that was an awesome landing. Oh no, Jason, I felt you on the pedals. I know you were doing something. I said, Harvey, I wasn't doing anything. So one of the laps in the patterns, I snuck in the back, this is in 512 Romeo. I grabbed Harvey's logbook. I started signing it and endorsing him. He was on the downwind, not paying attention. I put it back in his flight bag. I endorsed him for his solo. Finally, we land. I don't know, it's the third or fourth landing. He goes, we're making a full stop taxi back. He goes, I just know you're on there. I said, Harvey, stop the plane right here. I opened the door. He goes, where are you going? I said, I'm getting out of the airplane. You don't believe you're doing this on your own. I'm going to prove to you you're doing this on your own. His eyes got this big. He went around and made 3 amazing landings. So I've had all of that. I've had the student who I knew they were ready and they weren't. And you'll run into that scenario, and you've got to be a little mini Tony Robbins, like lifting them up with some motivational talk. I've also had, John, people who believe they're ready, and I know they're not ready. That's a story for another day. My friend, you've got to get to the point, John. What I do with my students, I say, listen, I know I talk a lot. Just because I'm quiet doesn't mean something's wrong. But I'm going to sit here with my feet flat on the floor. My arms are folded. This is not like passive-aggressive body language. And you call this out ahead of time. Just say this. Say, my arms are going to be folded. This isn't me being like passive-aggressive with my body language. This is me just proving to you that this is all you. If you need me, I'm right here. If I feel you need me, again, I'm still right here. My feet are flat on the floor. My arms are folded. I'm not saying a word. Like, I'm not going to coach you. I'm not going to do a radio call. It's all you. 3 landings with me not saying a word. Let's go. And this is what we do, right? And that's how it works from there. Hopefully that helps, sir. Don Gibson, what is a VDP? A VDP is a visual descent point, and how a VDP works, I'm not going to draw it. How a VDP works is it says, listen, there could be a tower here. Just because if you're shooting the approach, and this is the VDP, you're shooting the approach, this is my airplane 406, where you're shooting the approach, you break out before the VDP. You go, oh, I see the runway over there. Don't continue your descent below the VDP. The VDP is there because there's an obstacle, there's a tower, you don't want to find that tower. Even if you have visual on the runway, you don't descend to the MDA or to decision altitude until beyond the VDP. VDP is typically a non-precision approach, right? Because you're holding MDA. Oh, I see the runway, and you want to drop down. Nope, you hold MDA until the VDP, and then you drop on down. That's what a VDP is. Does that make sense? Tail Dragger 83 is the username. How much autopilot are we allowed to use in the IFR check ride? 1. You get 1 gimme approach. You're probably going to shoot 3 approaches at a minimum on your instrument check ride. One of those is allowed to be a coupled approach. So you better know how to use your autopilot because it is a freebie approach. After that, it'll probably be a hand-flown GPS approach. After that, it'll probably be an ILS or the vacuum system failure or some sort of failure as far as that goes. Richard, hey Richard, says, I'm currently in IFR trained. Do you have recommendations for how to maintain heading during partial panel approaches? As we were just talking about, my friend. It's really challenging, especially based on where your magnetic compass is located. In 2-3 Magzula, I'm spoiled, it's just above the panel. In a Cirrus, it's like up here, and you're like, it's a lot of head movement. And here we are, you got this Jason guy telling you, oh, Richard, minimize head movement in simulated and actual IFR, but you've got to be doing this constant scanning. It is very, very challenging. So yes, we're focused on that, but I also work back in your turn coordinator into this. Right now, you could still have a little bit of a turn going that's not visible on your turn coordinator. It is a lagging instrument in a way, but making sure your turn coordinator helping you keep those wings level. Using that magnetic compass. Realize the magnetic compass can lag as well, and making these slow, tiny head movements. Everything, as my IFR pilots will tell you, it's slow, tiny movements. You never find yourself chasing a localizer or chasing a heading. If my localizer's over here, I don't do one of these to find it because you'll end up doing one of these to get back to it. You go 2 degrees and you reel it in, and you reel it in like you're fishing. You reel it in, and I'm not even a fisherman. You reel it in until you get there, then you take that 2 degrees out and you fly it. Baby changes. I think the perfect airplane to do your instrument in is like a Cessna 150 because they go so slow. You guys doing your instrument in a Cirrus, I have such a respect for you because that airplane is so slippery and so fast. It's a very, very challenging airplane to do that in. All right. It is past lunchtime, and I'm a growing boy here. So let's take a few more questions, and then we're gonna head out. Again, Inflight Coffee is the first Saturday of every month at 11. So our next one will be the first Saturday in November. Let's find some other questions. Nolan, yeah, let's do Nolan's question. When getting started, going to get my medical certificate first, but have some medical history when I was a kid. What are some good resources to check out to make sure I have all my ducks in a row? Nolan, I'm going to give you the advice I give all our online ground school members. If you are hesitant about getting your medical, you don't want to have a denial because that makes a very long road. Your AME, Aviation Medical Examiner, is also a doctor of some type. They had to be, right, to become an AME. Here's what you do. Call up the AME and say, hey, I would like to do a mock AME aviation physical. I'd like to do a mock 3rd class aviation physical just for practice. I'll pay you for all your time. At the end of the day, you're not going to give me the actual medical. I just want to know the answer. If today was the real deal, would you have given me my medical? And if the answer is yes, you say, what's your availability tomorrow? Or what's your availability this afternoon? Because I want to do the same thing again, please. If they say no, ask them why. Hey, you're on this med, and this med's on the no-fly list. Hey, your blood pressure was here and it needs to be here. Hey, I think you could have sleep apnea. I need you to lose 20 pounds, right? These are the things you want to find out. Go ask for a practice, mock, whatever you want to call it, 3rd class medical. Because if you were to get denied, my friend, you can earn your medical, but as anybody here, if they would have the humility to share, it is a long, long road and a lot of fights with DC or Oak City to get your medical, and it will delay your training significantly. So if you have any hesitancy, go do it that way as well. So hope that helps you a ton on that, Nolan. So All right, last question. Let's go find it. I like that question there, it's great. How important is the simulator for pilot training? Is it helpful? Absolutely, I love using the sim. Think about the approach brief we just did. Practice briefing the approaches. Practice working through all of that. You're gonna be going into Orlando International. Why don't you go practice the possible approaches you're gonna be flying in there? Practice the taxis you're gonna be flying. All of those things are so valuable to you. I love the use of simulators, even home-based simulators where you can't log the time. So I think that is super. So listen, if you got some value today, I hope you'll head over to MzeroAtrial.com. We do this every Tuesday with our online ground school members, but Inflight Coffee will be back, whatever that first Saturday is in November. And I'm back live again, I wanna say the end of October. I'll email about it so you all know that date as well. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for being such a blessing to myself, my little family, this amazing MzeroA family of which you are all a part of as well. Have a blessed, abundant, outstanding rest of your day. And most importantly, remember, the good pilot is always learning. Have a great day, everybody. And don't forget, we're giving away that iPad. So MzeroAcontest.com as well when you sign off. We'll see y'all.